All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I am BreakyCPK, and today I'm actually going to be going over the Han map editor. A very basic tutorial of how to use the Heroes of Newerth map editor that you've actually always had this whole time. A lot of people don't even know that, but technically you've had it this whole time. The ability to create custom maps. Of course, the reason why we're doing this now is because we have the new contest coming up. Obviously, what I'm talking about, Soul Seeder, being announced recently. Our first map to kick it off really with a profits map, but we do have that contest coming up. $10,000 going to be on the line here, where map creators are going to get their chance, also just ideas in general, to put together a custom map that will ultimately be implemented in the Heroes of Newerth client. Of course, there's a lot more information on that in the Heroes of Newerth forums. You guys can see that for yourself. This video not necessarily about that, but again, this video kind of ties in the sense I wanted to give you guys a basic tutorial on how to use the map editor. So for those that come to this contest, they love the idea, they have ideas flowing through their head, but they're not really sure how to execute on that. This will at least be a step forward in terms of getting you ultimately to that point, hopefully. Now, as far as myself goes, you might know me obviously as a shoutcaster for Heroes of Newerth and everything. When it comes to map editing, I basically had zero skills whatsoever. I'm pretty much was on the same level as I'm sure a lot of you who happen to be tuning in this video were, in terms of I didn't really know what the map editor was and how to use it and whatnot. I actually got the chance to sit down with the great Hypercool, and he actually sat down with me, kind of gave me a quick tutorial on what to expect, and I honestly feel a lot better after that in terms of now I'm going to basically show you guys what I learned. So we're kind of taking it from that point of view. So again, I want to reiterate this. This is a very, very basic tutorial here in terms of how to ultimately use the map editor initially with the tools and whatnot. As far as advanced tactics like scripting and everything, that'll be for later on. There will be information out there eventually to get you guys going with that. But this will be to get things started. But so anyways, with that said, as far as the very first step that you should be doing here is ultimately we'll need you to copy your Heroes of Newerth folder. This is mainly you need to copy your Heroes of Newerth folder wherever it may be, and you need to actually make to copy paste basically. So create a new Heroes of Newerth folder with the same files and everything. So copy it, put it somewhere else, preferably somewhere else other than where your regular Heroes of Newerth folder. It doesn't matter honestly in the end, but just to help with confusion. And then preferably rename it to something like I did here, Heroes of Newerth Editor. Now what I like to do is then create a shortcut to it to put it on the desktop to make it easy of access, and again to show for this tutorial ultimately what I'm talking about. So that's the very first step. Create a copy of your Heroes of Newerth folder, rename it to make a point. This will be your Heroes of Newerth editing, basically. So the client within and the files within this folder will be for the map editing purposes. So once you have done that, you will actually also need to go ahead and create, what I like to do is create a shortcut. There's a couple of files within your Heroes of Newerth folder that you will need to create shortcuts for. Again, you don't have to, but just to make it easier. One of the files is, of course, this editor.bat file. This is actually what will ultimately execute the map editor and allow you to open it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right here. Create a shortcut, drag it to my desktop. So there we go. I guess I'm going to delete this one right here. And then the one other file that you'll need to do is actually the Heroes of Newerth executable itself. Again, this will be actually for the map editor version in terms of, so whatever custom map you create, actually when you want to work on it and perhaps working it on the fly with the client, seeing what's happening with your map in game, which we'll go into later on, this will actually be the Han program that you open up to ultimately witness that. So that's basically it. You need these three files right here. Well, technically two files. Again, the folder is what I was just showing you on screen right there. So now once you've done that, so again, very, very basic here. Hopefully I'm not overcomplicating it just yet. Again, ultimately this really is simple stuff. So once you have these files right here, what you're going to go ahead and do is actually, there is one thing to iterate here. No, we'll get into that later on. Never mind. So anyways, the editor.bat file right here, if you go ahead and just double-click on that, it'll run a quick executable, and then it actually will open up the Heroes of Newerth map editing client. So, again, it should be editor.bat. It should be in the Han folder. The new one that you copy that is especially, again, that's the one we're going to be using here. So here's the map editor. The Heroes of Newerth map editor, again, you've technically always had. This is what it should look like when you open things up. If not, then perhaps we'll have some troubleshooting for you guys for eventually. But this is how it should work several times for me now, including this tutorial here. So hopefully it is the same for you. Now, with that said, so first things first. You have, obviously, you got the grass right here, you got the map, you're like, okay, there's all these buttons, what the hell's going on? Well, first things first, let's go over the controls in terms of how to ultimately use the map editor. So I'm moving around the screen here. I'm actually using the WASD keys. You can actually use the arrow keys as well. It's basically the same thing as you would do for a first-person shooter. So WASD, use the arrow keys, whichever is more comfortable for you as the person that you are. So that's the basic to move around the map. That's what you're going to be doing, using those keys there. Again, it's, self-explanatory from there. As far as zooming in and out, it's as you maybe would expect. You zoom out using scroll down on your mouse. You zoom in by scrolling in on your mouse. So again, pretty self-explanatory there, but just to make sure that we're going over it. If you hold down your middle mouse button and then you move it around, it actually allows, and move the mouse around, of course, it allows you to basically get different angles and different views of the map. So that's obviously good for especially the fine editing when you want to really zoom in and get a better idea of what's going on. So that's the very basic, the controls in terms of how to use the map editor and move it around. So now that we got that out of the way, the first thing I also want to point out here now is, again, technically when you first open up the map editor, it's a new map, so you pretty much will be ready to go. Now, I want to clarify something, though, for, say, if you do start on one, but you want to create a new one, you're going to eventually create a new one, I'm sure, anyway. So we'll go ahead and just create a new map here just to be safe. Now, for this one, we're going to call Breaky Test. There you go. Now, as far as these, what you implement here in these other slots. Now, here's the thing. I want to stress here, the map editor itself, it is not 100% completed by any means. There are still additions and upgrades that are going to be happening to the map editor. So eventually, parts of this video with that said may even be, out of date or whatnot, but one of the changes that is a priority from my understanding is getting these numbers right here and these values to be a little more straightforward. Now, with that said, what you're going to want to do for now, before that is implemented, there's a couple things to keep in mind. So what you want to do is you want to set your map size to 9, you want to set your map scale to 32, and then you want to set your texture scale to actually 16 right here. And then, of course, max players per team, 5. You could make it less than that, I believe. It shouldn't be a big deal. But in this case, we're just going to go with 5. Now, these are the force of cultivar settings, from what I've been told. So these settings right here will be the exact replica of Force of Cultivar. Now, from my understanding, you can actually mess around with the size if you would like. I can't guarantee that it'll 100% work, though, but feel free to mess around with it and perhaps try to get a different size of a map. But again, I don't have the ultimate answers in terms of what you can do off the bat. But this is what you should start with. This is, again, just to get into the map editor and kind of start messing around with this. So we're going to go ahead and create this map right here. All right, so there we go. So it basically was the same map, obviously, in this case. But, again, that's just to make sure that you have an idea of what to do when creating a new map. So that's the first step right there. Now, okay, now to keep things going, again, what this tutorial is going to cover, I'm going to do my best to at least go over, for the most part, these tools here on the left-hand side. Again, most of them. We're not going to go over everything because there are certain things that are a little bit more advanced. And again, the point of this, once again, just to get the very basics out of the way and at least get you going into it. So with that said, the first tool right here is at the top left is called the Deform tool. Now, the Deform tool is actually a pretty fun tool here. It's basically used to raise and lower the ground, the map itself, as well as a couple other things which we'll get into in just a moment. So as you see up here, when you click Deform, it actually has this bar up here with some different settings on it. Now, we're going to go for the raise/lower tool. Now, before we do anything with that, though, there's a couple other settings here, such as the brush. Now, for those that are any familiar with Paint, Photoshop, anything like that, this should pretty much come to you. But these are different kind of brushes you can use in terms of how big it'll ultimately be. So say if I go to something like this, as you can see, it's a little bigger. If I want to go to something like this one here, even bigger, or I can go something pretty small. So it depends on what you want to do ultimately. So I'm just going to go ahead and choose this one right here. Whatever. Again, a lot of this is stuff that you're going to have to mess around with on your own. But this is what I'm choosing here. Brush strength. Now, that's in terms of basically how quickly and how aggressive it'll be in terms of making the change. So to give you an idea, so I'm going to set the brush strength pretty low right here to about 30. So here we go. I'm going to left click right here. And as you can see, as I left click, holding it down and moving my mouse around, it's Well, it's raising the ground. Now, to lower the ground, you would right-click. You would actually do a right-click, and you can go, down even further, kind of create a well right here to an extent, a little bit of that terrain. Again, so you can kind of have fun with that, make different objects with that in terms of, or terrain even, and set yourself up for that. So that's kind of a nifty tool there. You can kind of create these mountains or whatever. Anyways, I'm having too much fun. But to give you an idea, so if I set this to 255, like you see how rapid that is and how quickly it goes and how strong it is. So that gives you an idea of what the brush strength ultimately does with that. So again, left is to raise it, right is to lower it. There you go. Now, as far as another kind of nifty tool here is this flatten tool. Now, this is actually really cool because so what you want to do with the flatten tool, you actually want to go over a certain area that you want to basically make other areas around it that same level. So say, I have right here, I got kind of up and down all over the place. I want to make everything level with basically this top part right here. So I'm going to hold down left click and kind of go around all over around it. And as you can see, it actually brings everything that I go over with the mouse while I'm holding down the left mouse button to that same level eventually. And just so I can keep doing that if I want to. Now with the right click, it actually will smooth it out with that said. So I believe it actually ultimately does the same thing, to be honest. But anyways, left to right click, so there you go. And again, so say if I want to now do to this level, I click on here first, and then I go over it. And as you can see, then it goes to that level. So that's kind of that's a leveling tool. Again, you can have fun messing around with that, just as you will with all these tools, I'm sure. But just a quick explanation of what that is. So there you go. The cut tool. Now let's actually get some rays here real quickly to show you an idea of what the cut tool does. The cut tool, it basically resets that terrain to the default. So, of course, the default meaning what we started with, so like over here. So, now, as you can see, so when I hold down left click and I use it on this part, it'll reset all that to where it basically was from the beginning. So, in a sense, it can kind of be seen as an erasing tool, but it can also be, to create like a gap in between a hill that you have or whatever. It can be for that purpose, perhaps. So. All right, so now once again, to get a little bit of a hill here to show some of the other tools. So another thing here is, let's see, let me move it around a little better angle. Okay, so the next in line is the smooth tool, actually. Now with the smooth tool, again, it kind of does what you may think it does. It smooths things out. So I'm holding on the left click right here, and it gives it more of a fine texture in terms of just more of a, a smoothness to it. As far as the left or the right click does for that matter. So it kind of blends it in better together, and that's going to be really useful, for, making things look a little neater. So then as far as the others, not really much to go over those for the time being. But again, the brush strength and the brush, you can mess around with that, the different sizes and everything, and you can kind of test that out for yourself in terms of what you want to do with that. So there you go. That's the Deform tool and the very basics of that for kind of editing the terrain right there with the up and down and the smoothness and whatnot. So next in line will be the Paint tool. Now again, Paint tool may do as you might assume it does. Now how the Paint tool works, again, the same with the brush and the brush strength. Put that down a little bit right here. Now, if you click on this, these two colors right here initially, you have what you can see your primary color and your secondary color. Your primary color will be your left click, your secondary color will be your right click. Now, this is based on the RGB color system, the red, green, blue color system. So, basically you want to move around these scroll bars here. I'm sure there's somewhere online you could actually look up for yourself. You want to get a very specific color, and it'll have the number of values for you to kind of enter in to get that color. But you can kind of mess around with this, move these buttons around here, and, see what color you want to look to get here. I'm going to go for something like yellowish here. And on my secondary, I'll make more of a bluish or something like that. There we go. Anyways, so now when I left click, it'll become a little bit more of the yellowish. Now again, it kind of blends in with the terrain, so it's not just straight up a yellow color. It turns the terrain to that color. Now the right click here, as you can see, the right click makes it a little darker, that bluish color right there. So again, that's basically the color of the paint system here in terms of changing the colors on different parts of the map. Again, obviously, ultimately, it would be a very useful tool for once you actually are wanting to accomplish something with it. So, the next in line would be the texture tool right here. Let me go to my notes real quickly. There we go. Texture tool. Now, with the texture tool, there's textures that actually are already here for you to be able to change the terrain with. These TGA files right here. So if you click on that, initially it sets it to nothing basically. So you want to click on the texture button right here. Then it'll open up this scroll down menu of all these different textures you can choose from. As you can see, you know, I can keep going through them, the cobble, just all these different kind of textures you can kind of have fun with, messing around with, and seeing what you ultimately want to choose. So just to give you an idea though, I'm going to go with, let's go with one that stands a little bit more, something like cobble right here. So I'm going to go with cobble. That's for layer 1 right here. Layer 1 is just for the one layer in itself on the left-hand side right here. So I'm just going to kind of create a straight line. There you go. In fact, I can do it right on top here. Oh, look at that. I got a cobble mound. So there you go. Now, layer 2, as far as layer 2 is concerned, I want to go with something like vines over here. Layer 2 ultimately blends. If you click on layer 2 and then you click, you know, whichever one of the textures you want to choose from, it'll ultimately blend that texture with whatever else is there. So as you can see, it kind of blends in with the cobble here. Now, first off, left click is, you know, as again you just see, left click is you put it down. Right click, it actually will remove that texture. So once again, to go over that. But so this is kind of cool though. So again, with the vine right here, as I'm doing, it's kind of blending in. So if I was on layer 1, it would actually just straight up go over it, as you see right there. But yeah, you know, I can't get rid of that, I guess. But anyways, but again, the point of layer 2, it'll instead blend in with the terrain that you're putting it over. So you can kind of see it's kind of reaching out here with the vines. So, you know, keeping that in mind, both will have their purposes, obviously. But layer 2 for more of the blending and putting together. Layer 1 for just straight up, I want that terrain there for the time being. So, all right, there you go. That's for the texture. The very basic of that once again. So we're going to skip entities for now. We're going to move on to foliage here. You know, so basically your plants, your flowers, your trees or whatever. So foliage, you click on the foliage button, and you know, brushes, or like I said, bushes, flowers, and trees and whatnot. So now the very basics part of this. Now, first thing you'll need to do when you collect foliage here, I believe I'm pronouncing that right at least. Anyways, you want to select texture and then choose which, well, foliage you want to ultimately select here. So you can kind of scroll through this once again, get an idea. Let's get these orange poppies here. Let's see what that's about. Left click will put it down, right click will clear, as it's kind of been before. So now this also has the layers. It's basically the same as we were talking about with the textures as far as blending together. So layer 1 will straight up put it down. Now here's the thing about foliage here. In fact, that was a good example right there. Now the thing with foliage is if you zoom out far enough, it'll actually disappear. So it may look like I'm doing something to it to make it disappear. That's just me zooming out, and that's, I believe, has to do with the rendering and whatnot of the game itself. So but when you go close enough, then you can see it. So yeah, this is the foliage I'm creating with the left click. Again, I can right click to ultimately take it away right there. Now, as you notice, that was a lot. Now, these settings here on the right-hand side, this is going to be up to you to kind of tweak with them and mess around with them. Again, this tutorial isn't to show you exactly 100% what to do, but it gives you a very basic idea. But if you want to mess around, so you can mess around with the densities here. Obviously, you know, do what you think. So as you can see, it's a little bit less when I change the density a lot lower right there as far as bits and pieces. So. And then once again, the layer 2 as well, kind of blend it in if there were other there. So you can mess around with the height. You can do all of that. So again, this is all pretty self-explanatory with that as far as the size of it, the height, the width, and everything. So, and then the density, of course. And the biggest thing though is selecting the texture and choosing from the textures that you have, which as you can see, there are many of them, and you got plenty of options in here to kind of go from. So. There you go as far as that. As far as these other commands, again, a little bit more advanced as well, so not really to go over that, but that's for the foliage there. Sound will be fixed in the future is what I was told. So that's one of those things, as I mentioned near the beginning, how there's definitely going to still be some additions and whatnot to be had to the map editor. I believe sounds is going to be something in the future, so for now, I'm not going to worry about that. Grabbing a drink right there. All right, so next in line is actually blockers. Blockers is interesting here. What blockers does, it actually makes a point, as I'm left-clicking here after I clicked on blocker, so it creates this red blob, basically, wherever I drag it. Again, you can change the brush strength to get more fine areas. Now, the point of this, though, it makes a point, too, when you do ultimately play on the map, that the heroes and whatnot that are on it, they are not able to get to this area. If they happen to blink into it or whatnot, then, you know, the unstuck feature will kind of kick in, kind of like it would on Force Cadavar. You know, in the bottom right corner of the map, like the whole lake down there with the boat and everything, if, say, Retrodac blinks over there, she can't really move around. That's basically the same effect you're having here. And now texture, so you got both the create visual blockers and path blockers. Path blockers just straight up, you can't go to this area. Visual blockers is more of a, it'll be, as it kind of says itself, it'll be more of a visual that you can actually see for yourself that, oh, well, I can't actually go over there. It's for things like, well, say the lake area, it would be more of a visual blocker than it would be just a path blocker. So, path blocker maybe for a little bit finer areas, such as like within the middle of trees and whatnot. So that's an idea right there of what the blocker is for. Again, so in certain areas on the map, you know, you're most likely not going to want to allow the players to be able to go to for whatever reason. That'll be where this kicks in. I apologize there. Again, keeping hydrated as I do this tutorial here. All right, so there you go with blockers. Cliffs is going to be the next one in line. Oh, that's a big brush right there. Cliffs is the next one in line. I'm going to go to a much smaller brush for Cliffs here. Cliffs is fun. So you had the raise in the lower earlier with the Deform tool, able to create these hills and mountains and whatnot. Cliffs is just, well, straight up cliff. So when you click on Cliffs, it goes right away to raise and lower. Similar to what basically the same, in fact, to what it was before with the hill. So if you left click and drag around, as you can see, it'll start to create the cliffs. And you can kind of do that if I left click again on one of these, on this higher area, then it'll create even higher, and so on. So kind of create an area right here. And again, I can keep on raising it up, the left click, kind of go like that. Now, right click will do, well, the opposite. Right click will instead go down, and it'll create holes here and whatnot. So now the funky thing about the cliff tool, it can be a little bit frustrating sometimes when trying to use the cliff tool with just the very basic setting of the raise lower. As you can see, you know, I got a lot of notches here and everything, and it can kind of, you know, be, when you're going up and down, it can kind of be tough reading sometimes. Now the easiest way to deal with that is instead use a flatten tool when you have a cliff. Now the flatten tool works as it did before. Whatever level of terrain you click on initially with the left click, and then you scroll around, it'll actually make everything else in that area the same level eventually. So that, again, that gives you an idea in terms of how to use the cliff tool maybe a little bit more effectively. Again, so if I left click here and then I start dragging around, it'll make it that next layer right there. So if I right click and start dragging around, then I basically get rid of all that stuff that was on that level, and I bring everything else up to the same. So again, a lot of this really is kind of just muscle memory stuff and things like you in the end, you're probably more than likely be able to figure out for yourself. But like I said, that's the whole point of this tutorial. We'll to kind of get over that step and at least make it a little bit less intimidating, I guess, would be a good way to put it. So there you go. Can maybe put some mini mounds in here just because, why not? So as far as that's concerned, these other tools here, not a whole lot to go with them. Again, you can kind of test them out for yourselves. Well, this is actually a pretty fun tool here. The ramp tool. Now, I actually made my thing a little bit too big here to make ramps off on the sides like this. But as you can see, I'm making ramps on these little mounds. In fact, let's make these mounds here a little bit. Actually, no, let me use a flatten tool, as I was just kind of saying it makes sense to. Here, I'm going to need to, oh, geez. Okay, let's do this. Let's make it all this level, and then I can put the ramp onto this thing here. All right, so here we go. I'm going to put a ramp onto this side. So if you click the ramp, add, remove ramp button up here, so you can see it's green. That means you can put a ramp in. So if you hold down left click, go around that area, it'll start creating ramps, you know, where it can. Obviously, it can't be at angles there and whatnot. But so it'll allow you to create the ramp. Right click, again, as you would assume, it removes it. So this is good, you know, such as, well, ramps, obviously, in the Force Cadavar map itself. That's how the ramps in that map were created, of course. So there you go with ramps. Again, another kind of fun tool there to be able to change the terrain and have fun with that. Now, the last button over here that we're going to be going over is the water button. As far as the water button is concerned, it does exactly as you would think it does. It creates freaking water. One thing we're going to do here is so that I can actually show you how to use it. So let's create a div right here. Again, I went back to Deform. I'm going to create a lower, I'm going to create kind of a, well, let me get a bigger brush first, kind of a divot here to ultimately put the water. That might be a little bit too much. Anyway, so I'm going to create it kind of a little bit different here to put the water. So there we go. Now, when I go back to water, the first thing you're going to want to do is you want to select your material. The one that I recommend selecting is the well dot material. It's the one at the bottom there. You can mess around with the other ones, but we're just going to go with this one for now. Now, here's the thing. So you click on well dot material. Then you want to left click in the area like you would everything else really of where you want to place it, say in this hole right here. So I'm going to go ahead and hold down left click and start dragging around this area. As you notice, nothing seems to be happening. Don't worry, something actually is happening. There is a little bit of workaround around this. Unfortunately, again, I don't know the exact reasons, but with the current status of the map editor, for water, when you try to put water in, initially it won't show up. However, to fix that problem, what we're going to do, we're actually going to save our map real quickly. So let's see, Breaky test is going to be the name. Okay, big note to point out here. When saving a map, never put spaces. Spaces are bad. Just don't use spaces whatsoever whenever you're saving the map. So there you go. I've said it. If you do spaces, bad things will happen. Okay, so no spaces, Breaky test. I'm going to create the map. There we go. Now what I'm going to do, since I saved it, now I'm going to actually load the map here. There's a couple other ones that I had in here. Let's see, Breaky test, S2Z. There we go. So I'm going to load the map. Let's hope this works. Hey, it worked. Thank God. It actually worked. No, but that's not too surprising because that's what was supposed to happen. So there you go. So now, as you can see, now the water is showing. Oh, freaking out there. And so that's how you get the water to kind of show up eventually. So again, when it looks like you're not doing anything initially with the water tool, you really are. You'll just have to save and then reload the map, and then you will be good to go. So, that was the last button to kind of go over there, and again, the brush strength. There are other buttons, as you may have noticed, within several of these. We didn't go over them necessarily, just whether it's more advanced or there's, it's kind of stuff that you'll just test out for yourself. Again, this is the basic to kind of get you going here. The last thing, though, wanted to go over was one of the entities here. Entities is a big thing when it comes to map creating as far as, well, everything really. But the big thing that we're just going to go over here, for entity at least, is actually creating just a spawn point. So we'll give you an idea of how this works. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a spawn point here. So when you click on the entity button, first things first, I want to click on the create tab up here. Make sure it's on that rather than select. And then I'm going to actually put an entity right here, left click. As you can see, it's a freaking teapot. You might recognize that. So now I'm just going to go over to select, and so I don't continue to create another one. Now you want to make sure you're clicked on it. When it's red like that, it usually means it does. But just in case, maybe click off and click back on it with the select key or the select tool up here, just to make sure that that's what we're editing. So first things first, you want to name it. Now, for right now, for this purpose, it's not really a big deal, whatever you name it. However, when you are doing a little bit more advanced map creating, you want to remember the name that you name it, because that'll be very important for tweaking settings on it and whatnot in the future. So respawn A, we'll just name it that right here. As team, want to make it the Legion team. It'll give you, passive, neutral, Legion, or Hellborn. We're going to spawn as a Legion team right here. And then type, you actually want to go to, what is it called? Trigger _ spawn point. So we're going to scroll all the way down to trigger _ spawn point. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff to do with these. Again, that's a lot more advanced things, so stuff that I'm sure you'll kind of look into and see you can do a lot of things, man. And future videos perhaps, but I know there's going to be a lot of tools out there to assist with that. But for now, again, keeping it simple. So trigger _ spawn point, and then from there, you're good to go. So once that's done, let me actually make sure, do it one more time. Okay. Yeah, so that should be good. Okay, so then once that's done, okay, so that should be good now. Just press enter. You can click off and click back on, and as you can see now, so when I click on that, it makes a spawn A, the trigger spawn point, and it's for Legion. So that I now have a spawn point for a Legion team on my map. It's not the most effective spawn point, but it is a spawn point nonetheless. So what we're going to do right here, I'm going to go ahead and save the map real quickly. There we go. So map has been saved. Now what I'm going to do is open the map in the Han client and actually test this out, that hopefully I actually spawn where the teapot is once I join as a Legion team. So I'm going to close out of this real quick. You technically don't have to close it. Alright, so remember guys, when opening up the Han.exe here, it has to be the one from your Heroes of Newerth editor folder, the one that we had you copy and paste at the very beginning. It has to be in the same one as the map editor itself, or else you won't be able to see your map in the first place. So make sure it's that one. We did here at the very beginning. That's what I said, too, at the very beginning. So you open up the Newerth program, that one specifically. And then once you log in, this is the live client in the end. So once we're all logged in here, all you want to do is create a hosted game. You want to go to create. You want to make sure to set to practice. And then also make sure you select the map. In this case, there you go, map_Breaky test. So just create the map, the name, or anything like that. It doesn't really matter. The settings, just try to make sure it's on opaque and then nothing else really checked. I have private GAN. It's not really a big deal, though. But again, they'll set to practice, and then you basically will be joining a practice game. So once you are in the lobby, and then just the very basic sit down, press the start button, and then again, hopefully this works out. But once you're in the game, you should spawn at that location that we created at that point. So let me just actually do this real quickly. All right, so sit down, hit the start button. And then once it loads up here, you just select any random hero. It doesn't matter. I'm going to choose good old Berserker because I like this guy. Hit the ready button. And then into the game we go. Crossing the fingers. No, I'm sure this will work. That is the purpose of it after all. So loading in, and there you go. So we spawn at the location that we created, and it's a little bit different perspective, obviously, now that we're actually in the game itself. And again, this terrain not the friendliest for me getting around with, but as you can see, I kind of move around. I can kind of see the other stuff that's there, at least if I have vision of it, that is. So exactly how it was supposed to work. So there you go. Again, you can get that fun with that. It's even doing it now. It's a good feeling when it all just works out. But like I said, this is a very basic, but hopefully at least this helps you get into using the map editor, so you're not really intimidated by now, or now you're just even aware of it for that matter. And then you can start creating those great and wonderful maps. So guys, with the contest coming out, Soul Cedar happening and everything, custom maps are finally coming on, sort of. But anyways, no, we're really looking forward to seeing these great ideas that come about, these executions of these maps. There's some great ones out there already, and I can't wait for many, many more to come. So once again, guys, I really appreciate you guys tuning into this map editor tutorial here at a very basic level. There will be, I believe, there's plans to have a wiki coming out here in the near future that'll have all these some more advanced information on how to start getting further than just simply this. But even I highly recommend, just honestly, again, looking into yourself, open up the map editor, not only do the things that I was suggesting, but just start messing around for yourself. That's a big part of what map editing is all about in the end as well. So can't wait to see what your imaginations come up with. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you next time. Thanks again. Bye-bye.